All right, welcome back from our little break. Hope you guys enjoyed the demos on setting up your nodes. Now we're going to move on to our last topic of the day, but we're going to have a quick panel and then followed by several demos. And we're going to talk about Lightning. This is one of our major topics that's been happening for a while. Personally think that Lightning progress is going amazingly well, while others continue to say that it's been happening for 3 years and where is everything. So we're about to break through all the FUD and try to explore the topics with our esteemed panel. Let the panelists introduce themselves.
So yeah, hi, I'm Christian Decker. I'm a Bitcoin enthusiast since 2009. And I currently work for, just closer, okay. So I currently work for Blockstream on the Lightning specification and the C Lightning implementation. Yeah, that's me.
I'm John Carvalho, the Chief Communications Officer at Bitrefill. Been in Bitcoin for about 6+ years, and I'm really into Lightning.
My name is Nadav. Some of you may know me as Shesek. I'm an ambassador at the Tel Aviv Bitcoin Embassy. I'm the founder of Bitrated, a service that provides buyer protection for Bitcoin payments, and also working as a contractor with Blockstream on all kinds of different stuff.
All right, so we got a little bit less than an hour. We're going to try and get through a bunch of topics regarding Lightning. And I want to start off with the introduction of how Lightning was introduced to the world. And what everyone knows and what it says in Wikipedia is the first Lightning presentation was done by Joseph Poon and Theodore Droja. I can never pronounce his name. They did the very first presentation. They are pretty much credited with inventing Lightning. But recently I heard that, Christian, you yourself had either an identical or a very similar implementation, but because it was an academic paper, it was stuck in peer review, so nobody knew it existed, and they kind of beat you to it. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Yeah, so what you just described is what's called being scooped on an academic level. And it can happen whenever you write up, you take your time doing your research and write up a paper, and then you submit it to a conference, and then it takes months to get it back from the reviewers, and they will either say, okay, you're good to go, or you were rejected. And so what happened to me was basically I did some research on what happened during the Mt. Gox fiasco back in 2014. And once we basically have shown that whatever Mt. Gox claimed happened to their funds did not happen, it was time for me to go back to do research on scalability. And there was this very old idea that was basically introduced by Satoshi's client in the first ever release, which is basically called this mechanism of doing off-chain transfers in an incremental fashion, where we can basically renegotiate an individual payment over and over again, and only eventually settling the aggregate of these individual payments. There was an implementation called the simple micropayment channels by Spielmann and Hearn, which had been used for a while, and but they were limited to basically being one-directional. So you could open a payment channel to somebody and perform incremental payments to them, but you could never send money back. So you were basically paying off from a debit card, and once that was expired, then you had to close this channel and settle on-chain. So the idea was basically to create a duplex version of that, where you can send money in both directions, and that's exactly the construction that we came up with, is basically duplex micropayment channels, where you could open a channel, let's say between us two, I put $10 on a table, and these $10 being on a table ensure that I can't grab the money and run, and we now have to agree on how we want to split these $10. And now we negotiate back and forth multiple times until eventually we say, okay, this is the final state, let's settle this. and then we go back to the Bitcoin blockchain, and from this multi-signature account that we created when putting the money in this shared account, we spend this money back to one output to you and one output to me, reflecting what the final balances between us are, right? And so we had a construction which was a bit, well, it was kind of neat, but also very inefficient, and we submitted that as a paper, and then at the same time it was pointed to this webpage called lightning.network, which basically had the white paper by Taj and Joseph on it, and I was like, oh no. It turns out I spent the whole weekend trying to understand what they did, and it turns out that it was really similar, and I just had gotten scooped. So yeah, that's what happened if you try to play nice with the academic system.
Learned your lesson?
Yeah, not publishing academic papers anymore. No, go onto archive and just publish a preprint and you're fine.
All right, well, let's over to John. John, how are your academic papers been treating you?
Yeah, I don't have too many academic papers at the moment. My GitHub mostly consists of trolling people's README MDs.
All right, so let's briefly talk about the practical application, and then we're going to get into the technical side. So you're now at Bitrefill, and prior to that, you were very involved with Exotica, and both of your ventures, they deal a lot with payments. How do you see Lightning affecting businesses? Well, tell us about Bitrefill, first of all, and then how Lightning is being used, implemented, and what can it change?
Sure. I think that what most interests me about Lightning is that it's an opportunity finally for people, for centralized services to be able to provide services within the Bitcoin framework without having that custody aspect. Right now we see a big trend in the industry where people are trying to hoard Bitcoins with custody. They're trying to give you interest rate if you deposit your Bitcoin with them. They're trying to get you to loan your Bitcoins, borrow off of your Bitcoins, etc. I feel like that's a dangerous direction to move towards, and I'm much more interested in seeing people move towards Lightning, because Lightning, what we're trying to show at Bitrefill is that you can provide centralized services and the advantages of efficiencies that a centralized service can provide through Lightning without actually holding everybody's coins for them. So, for example, the first service that we came out with, called Thor, is just simply a way for people to get onto the Lightning network we open a channel directly to you and give you capacity to be able to receive. And what this did, the initial demonstration that was probably the most popular, is some of you maybe heard of LN Trust Chain, and this was basically just a spontaneous community experiment where people just started sending Lightning Network transactions to each other, and what it really demonstrated was how easy or difficult it was or wasn't for people to get onto the Lightning Network. And one of the things that people had to address was they needed capacity to be able to receive the torch. And we ended up seeing a lot of traffic come our way because they didn't know what to do or how to do it and how to make it happen, and we facilitated that. But the only time they had to trust us was the moment where they paid us to provide the service, which is a moment. It's right after we receive the money, we open the channel and there's no more trust involved. So we are going to continue to try to find ways to leverage this new dynamic. And I think in the future, especially for like digital-based online businesses that are selling digital-based products, that we may be able to have a future where companies can focus on providing specialized services instead of focusing on how to safely secure your information or your money. And they can just focus on this. Like you mentioned Exotica. I hope one day that maybe we can have some kind of smart contract aspect to Lightning where you can have a central provider that can take their cut for providing access to a channel, and the streamers can receive the money pretty much directly. So that way there's no relationship with money other than taking your cut. And I think we're going to see a lot of things like this as Lightning advances.
All right, let's go to Nadav for a little bit of the technical side of it. So For the average Joe trying to understand Lightning, I mean, what they're hearing is we have so many different implementations. Lightning Labs, Blockstream is working on one, and Claire is already out. Blue Wallet is already out, and there's probably others. C Lightning. Can you just describe like how different they are, how similar they are, how they interact, and how's the cooperation has been in implementing everything that just works?
Okay, so wallet-wise, I think there are three main categories. First is custodial, like Blue Wallet that you mentioned. The other are like the full node Lightning implementation. Full node is probably not the exact right term, but the C Lightning, LND, and the Claire, which run on a desktop. And then you have the mobile wallets that run everything on your phone. The first and last kind are probably the ones that fit the best for like mainstream users. The second one, which is what Spark does, and the wallet I'm working on, probably more for advanced user at this stage. You also asked about.
Well, how is it? How are they different and how are they similar? Because they all have to function with each other, right? So they all have to.
Right. So they all follow the Lightning protocol, obviously, which makes them compatible with each other. And the Lightning protocol has been developed in collaboration between the three main implementer groups. They've done They have meetings from time to time. They have specifications that they're working on together to make sure that everything is compatible. Differences, so the custodial wallets, you don't really, it's not your Bitcoins, right? Someone else's Bitcoins, they let you use them. They might be nice and let you use them for a long time. It might, well, but it's not your Bitcoins. It could be a reasonable trade-off, I guess, for small amount for people that want to experiment with Lightning, to have something that is compatible with the network. Like there are some cool stuff today that you can only do with Lightning, like Satoshi Place kind of stuff, all the stuff that involved micropayments or nano payments even, and stuff that require instant confirmations that you can't do at all without Lightning. So the custodial solutions let users play with it, and maybe it can be a ramp to moving to a more to a better wallet at some point. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me go to a more specific question, and maybe Christian can comment on it, because I got trolled pretty hard for something that I said in one of the videos, probably about 6 months ago. It was a video that I did with Jimmy Song, and you know the notation like bothered me a little bit, right? Like we just had presentations on how to set up a Bitcoin node, and I have a Bitcoin node running, and it's not trivial, right? It's not as simple as downloading an app. It's a little more, there's a little more involved there, right? But with Lightning, we also refer to it as running a Lightning node, but it actually is as simple as downloading an app in some cases, right? Maybe not as simple as downloading an app. I'm hoping we can get there, but it's certainly simpler than setting up a Bitcoin node. I personally would have loved to have a different notation for that. Like, and Jimmy and I were talking about it. Hey, how can we get the world to call these Lightning Vertex or something like that, other than the word node, to not to scare people that they have to go through command lines to set it up. Like, what do we do?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting point of view. I usually have the opposite feeling, that running Bitcoin is pretty trivial. Even if resource hungry, it will cost you resources, but you download it, you start it, and you basically use it. Whereas with Lightning, you have all of these new concepts, channels and capacity and routing and watchtowers and all of that fun stuff that you sort of push onto users that they have to learn, right? And so the mental barrier for users to actually start using Lightning might be more intimidating than using Bitcoin, which is, I mean, I download this, yes, it's using like 90% of my hard disk, but it's something that I can start and stop, and it will be there when I need it, right? Whereas Lightning, I need to put in the extra effort to open channels, to make sure that I have capacity, that I can route my payment to whoever my destination is, and there is definitely some overhead that we created with Lightning that gets built on top of Bitcoin, and that's definitely a suboptimal situation. And I think we need to advance the protocol, but also the user experience in such a way that we don't require users to actually learn about these new concepts, and we need to abstract away these new concepts as much as possible, such that we go back to having a situation where we have this app that we can start and stop whenever we want, and it will work out of the box without us having to learn all of these new concepts. And that's where Nadav's work comes back in, because I'm a techie. I'm hopelessly in love with these sort of complex things, and I love theorizing about these. But it's the UX designers and the people actually talking to users that are not your techies that spend hours and hours every day working on this, and make it easy for them to use this. So that's my goal, that I'd like to make this easier, but it definitely isn't at the moment. And in our defense, it's also been very useful to keep people at bay and not have everybody and their mom jumping onto Lightning and start using it and reporting bugs that cannot really be solved.
You guys want to comment on this about the usability and how do we make it, way more user friendly?
I agree with everything he said, but I'm going to say a bunch of stuff that disagrees with it. I feel like the way to advance Bitcoin is to slap it in the face. And I'm personally a little bit tired of hearing people say, oh, it's reckless, it's dangerous, we have to wait till it's in core, we have to wait for this, wait for that, do things according to spec, let's get in line. I feel like I want everybody to get on Lightning now. Because I think that having the responsibility and the weight of it on everybody will make priorities realign for what they're actually developing, what features they're implementing, and the economy will force how Lightning evolves, rather than what techies are interested in. And that's kind of what we're doing a little bit with Thor and things like this. And I also think it's kind of like, everybody wanted to give, say, Blue Wallet a lot of shit because they are custodial. But all they were trying to do was make Lightning easy in its current state. And so, but that resulted in more people being interested in a neutrino and more people trying to find out which wallets weren't custodial. And so I like the kind of pressure of people coming onto Lightning quickly. I like the pressure of, all right, Lightning isn't decided as a protocol that, like, in the same way that the consensus doesn't work the same way as Bitcoin. You can break the rules in Lightning as long as you'll connect to somebody else that's willing to break the rules with you. So consensus doesn't work the same way. And if we want to have really large channels, we can ignore the channel limit and we can open a channel together at any size. And that's what makes me the most fascinated, is how can we break the rules to do new things and let the people decide what is useful to them and where to focus our attention.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to agree with this, with opening up to everybody. We shouldn't definitely exclude anybody from using it, but I'll call on you to field the bug reports and the issue requests and the Stack Overflow questions that we have to answer. I mean, agreed. Blue Wallet. I totally agree that Blue Wallet is a great way to onboard people, even if it's custodial. We can give people the option of investigating their own implementation, their own running their own node, but we shouldn't require it from them. But currently, onboarding everybody and their mom basically has the issue that, I mean, we're 3 rather small teams, and if we had this sudden influx of people, we wouldn't be able to sort of help them on board, because this is still a system that requires user support, right? And the idea is that by having a slow and controlled rollout, we could create this community around us that could also help support newly incoming users as well. So yes, onboard everybody, but do it at a pace that we can actually support them as they come in. Otherwise, we will have a backlash of people that get frustrated because they can't get it to work, and then they'll just end up running the other way and say Lightning just doesn't work. It's crap. It never will work. And I guess this disenfranchisement would be worse than having them wait for a few more weeks, maybe months.
Just a quick response is, yeah, I do agree. I just enjoy being like, it's like the concept of the Overton window. You know, I want to move the middle a little more towards reckless. That's all. I'm not saying everybody should think like me and all the developers should just convert to being as experimental as possible. We don't want people to lose money, and you know, even with Bitrefill, when we're doing things with our node, there are times where we've lost a little bit of money trying to do things, and so I know that there's dangers there, and I've seen them, but I do. What fascinates me is the other side, and so I if there's somebody's going to be pulling the window over, I don't mind being that asshole, you know.
All right. Well, John, you said something else in your statement, and I want to highlight that as well. You said that, well, some of the Lightning implementations caught, you know, some backlash and a lot of shit for what they're doing. And it's really unfortunate that this panel was supposed to be 4 people, and the person that is missing is Alex Petrov of Bitfury, and he was going to join the Lightning panel. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, because they got a lot of shit for the terms and conditions on their Lightning implementation, and people saw it as not very private. I know he's not here. I've spoken to him when that happened, and he said, well, we're a big company, and you know, lawyers wrote a big document and it wasn't thoroughly checked, and the wording, you know, was lawyer speak, which is not what they really intend. But you know, they also have Bitfury also provides other software to help track transactions. We all know about that. So I know Alex isn't here, which is unfortunate, but what were your guys' thoughts on that? And what is Lightning from a privacy point of view? I don't know if Nadav, I don't know if you want to go first on this or anyone else.
I'll go first. I don't want to speak for Alex. I don't want to speak for Bitfury. And I don't know all of the details about what the complaints were. But in general, you know, most people aren't checking. They're installing these apps on their phone. They're accepting any terms that are put in their face, and they're just using these things. So it's good that we have like people like Block Digest dissecting these things and complaining. But I do know that Bitfury did come back with a thoughtful response explaining where they stood on everything and how they weren't collecting data in this way or that way, or using data for Crystal, etc. But in the end, you know, we all have to do our own due diligence and check these things. So I don't know, like there's a lot of options with Lightning wallets, and do your research, pick the one that suits your own risk profile. Other than that, you know, I'd prefer that they speak for themselves.
So I don't know about the wallet. I saw on Twitter people talking about it. I don't know much other than that. But like more generally, I am concerned that over the years, I don't think that we have seen sustainable funding models for Bitcoin wallets and for low-level protocol work. So I think the thing we have today is that companies like Blockstream that either as investor money or some other way to make money are able to fund this kind of work, but I'm not aware of any wallet that is actually making money, that is actually able to pay developers based on its own income. And I am worried that it's going to go to the data collection direction, because it seems, I don't know, unless they're going to figure something else out, it seems like it could be a direction that wallets will go towards, using the data as a revenue stream model.
So how do we mitigate that?
Good question. Next question. I have absolutely no idea. But just to comment on that one, I'm not aware about any of the details. I haven't even seen tweets about it. But I do think that I mean Bitcoin, just as much as Lightning, we are building infrastructure, and infrastructure by itself never makes money. So we need people using that infrastructure to sort of feed back into into the development of the infrastructure itself. And I think this is a value that the companies will realize over time, that there is this underlying platform that they have been using, that they have been building companies on top of, that they also need to financially compensate or at least invest into extending and improving this infrastructure. Otherwise, we will end up in a situation where these companies just aren't sustainable anymore. It's just as much as a part of their infrastructure as it is part of the community's infrastructure, I think.
But we are 10 years in now, and they just barely started to understand it about Bitcoin itself, it seems, which is like, as the monetary layer, the base layer of everything is even more important, and we barely see any of that there even, though there are some positive, there is a positive trend, I think. It improves. I think some companies are starting to be more responsible towards helping with protocol development, but I'm still not seeing enough of it.
I have a few perspectives on this, in the context of wallets at least. Before Lightning even existed, I was thinking about, the incentives in Bitcoin and these kinds of things, and I said, we really need a way to incentivize nodes. Like, miners have the block reward, and I just feel like the design might be better if we had some kind of incentivization for nodes. And then one day Lightning came along, and the concept of routing and fees, and actually in a weird way, Lightning does compete with miners a little bit for transactions. And so we have this node incentivization concept now. This is one way. It goes back to what I said earlier. Acting as a centralized entity and providing centralized services for Lightning allows you to do so without people having to trust you. Now, it doesn't have to look like Blue Wallet, where you're just full custodial. It can look like where maybe as a wallet, you provide services to your Lightning users. You manage their channel liquidity for them. You manage a watchtower for them. You manage things, your routing for them, etc. You provide the best routing, whatever it might be. But there are ways that now that they can make money off of literally providing wallet-related services. So that's one perspective I have. Another I have is you see a lot of wallets, as a way to make money, they try to incorporate the ability to buy or sell Bitcoin. So they partner with an exchange. This is okay, but I don't know how much usage it's getting, if it's bringing them enough money, but it at least introduces them into a liquidity area. But you can do this, they can partner with other companies that provide services for why somebody would have a wallet on their phone. Another example is BitRefill. We do this, we integrate with wallets, so we let the wallets be able to make a percentage when they offer people a way to shop. So you can buy gift cards with your wallet balance. That's another way that they can do things.
But I can actually argue the opposite side of what you said, because Lightning to me has a double problem. Yes, the developers that are building the apps, it's hard to monetize that and for them to get paid. And also, as a Lightning node, again, terminology I don't like, as a Lightning node, you're routing transactions, and like you said, that's great because you can collect a tiny fee by routing those transactions. But going back to, tracking all of those transactions, let's say if JP Morgan Chase wants to run a node, they can pay people to route through their node, and a lot of people will choose not just the free option, getting paid option for some middleman to see all the payments.
Well, you're making a little bit of a leap because the Lightning Network routing does use onion routing. So the privacy and the security aspects are similar to the Tor network. And what we may see is, we may see governments deploying a lot of routing nodes so they can gather information, so they can get information about where things are coming from and where they're going. But the cool part about Lightning that's different than Tor is they have to stake Bitcoin to do it. So it's a very different dynamic. It's very interesting to think about that if the government wants or anybody wants to start sniffing and seeing what's going on the Lightning Network, they're going to have Bitcoin to do it. And in the end, I think with all things with Bitcoin, we'll figure out how to make fungibility happen, privacy happen. I shouldn't say fungibility.
So overall, do you think using Lightning will add fungibility to in relation to on-chain transactions, or potentially reduce it?
Well, I don't want to use fungibility this way. Fungibility is a definition that just means that 1 equals 1. It's not to do with privacy. But if you want privacy, I think that you could say, yes, it's more private, but I think it's just a different profile than the main chain. There are ways you can use it that are much more private, but within the person you're connected to, there's not much privacy. So it depends on how you use it. You have to use it responsibly, just like how you use Bitcoin to get privacy.
So overall, I think that that Lightning will be a huge improvement of privacy when it comes to Bitcoin payment, especially because, well, we don't leave all of these eternal traces in a public record for all eternity. What we leave in the Bitcoin blockchain is only the aggregate of individual transfers, not the individual transfers themselves, reducing the capacity of observers to create profiles from these traces. And even when it comes to observing traffic in the network itself, the use of the onion routing will allow us to basically route a payment from any point to any other point without individual nodes in the route learning about the endpoints of the sender and the recipient of the payment itself, and we can route these payments however we want in this network. So overall, I'm pretty happy with Lightning as a privacy increasing system on top of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin as a sort of judge of last resort should we have a disagreement between two endpoints of a channel.
And Nadav, you share the same view? Lightning would be a privacy improvement?
Yes, definitely. I definitely see Lightning as an improvement, both for Lightning payments themselves, and there are also some interesting use cases for the onion routing of Lightning for on-chain payment. So, for example, you could open a channel and find some long route to a swap provider like Loop, which they recently announced, or there was another one, Zigzag, I think, and then basically send over a long anonymous route the funds and then get it back to some other address. So yeah, I think Lightning makes a big dent even.
So there's always the issue that some participants are, so everybody just mentions that when I'm doing a payment, the intermediate hops are involved in this payment as well. But it's just those participants that can see this, and I can basically switch route whenever I want, and they can't really uncover the route that I use. So it's not possible for a passive actor in the network to actually observe and profile my activity in the network. It's the guys that I select for my payments that will see a blip of information about my payment and nobody else.
All right, I got two more quick topics, and we should still have time for some audience questions. So, and I know, John, you're going to go off on it a little bit because you already did in our other panel. What do you say to those that continue to bash Bitcoin, saying that Lightning isn't Bitcoin and it's not what Satoshi ever wanted for Bitcoin? What do you say to them?
Well, I've kind of said this a lot in recent podcasts and stuff, but just by nature, anything that is not Bitcoin is competing with Bitcoin, as far as a network, cryptocurrency network goes. And so they always have to find their favorite narrative for positioning themselves against Bitcoin. And they get pretty creative sometimes. And what they're figuring out is who they have to be creative towards is not Bitcoiners, it's people that are ignorant. And so they prey on ignorant people by making arguments that sound provocative but are hard to actually do the research to disprove. And so it's kind of easy to talk to a noob and say, hey, Lightning is not Bitcoin. They even admit it themselves. It's a separate network. It's not Bitcoin. Your Bitcoin gets locked up, and they can make it sound bad. But the truth is, it is Bitcoin. Like everything you're moving is Bitcoin. You're just reallocating it through a cryptographic scheme. And This stuff is what I got into earlier. We have to find good elevator speeches to be able to explain these things to people when they have these questions, because it is FUD. It's lies. Calling Lightning Network centralized. Okay, I started this panel by explaining why the centralization doesn't matter. When people normally talk about centralization being a problem in crypto, it's because they think that you could have your Bitcoins taken from you. But that's not the way Lightning works. Lightning takes the efficiencies of centralization and separates them from the custody aspect. So it's FUD.
Yeah, users have critics have a tendency to conflate three different aspects of the Lightning Network. They conflate the network centrality, as in the structure of nodes and their channels, with the structure of payments flowing over this network. So having a very prominent participant in the network must mean that this is now a trusted entity, and that means that we have to use this one to perform payments. That's not true, and that the structure of the network leaks information about where payments are flowing. That's also not true, and they conflate the trust nature of into nodes with the structure of the network topology as well. So if we have a prominent participant, and then this node must be a single point of failure in this network, that's also not true. It's very cheap to open each channel to just bypass whatever node you want. The reason that there are some prominent participants is because that's an efficiency gain when it comes to routing payments. They have no special access to whatever happens in the network other than what I have with my Raspberry Pi running C Lightning. So.
All right, Nadav, do you want to comment on this, or we'll get to my last question and then some Q&A?
Maybe just very shortly. Education around Lightning is hard. It's a complex topic, lots of moving parts, lots of variables. I've been doing a lot of education related to Lightning at the Bitcoin Embassy. I also did a lecture not too long ago that was trying to build Lightning from the ground up, like why we need it, what it does, the drawbacks, and it was like a 4 hours lecture with a break in the middle. So yeah, it's challenging, and the misinformation I think is much easier to just throw around, and then trying to counter it requires a lot of effort. But we have been seeing the same thing with Bitcoin and the block size debate, so we're getting more experienced with this, so I hope it will improve.
Yeah, thick skin.
All right, so here's my last question, and I want your best thinking. So I see John already smiling because he knows the reference. And so when, I'm saying when, not even if, when Lightning is, taking over the Bitcoin payments, what are some of the best use cases, like futuristic use cases? Like we're talking like 3 to 5 years from now. Like what can we do? Like what I picture is something like, all right, so I'm walking around some city and I turn on my hotspot on my cell phone, and because I have data that I'm willing to pay for, and I'm letting anyone around me connect to that data, and they're literally paying me in Bitcoin through Lightning for every megabyte that they're using, and I don't know who they are, they don't know who I am, I can't access their cell phone, but I'm profiting from that. And I would love to use that if I go to some country. I just came back from Egypt. My global SIM card didn't work there very well. I had to go buy a SIM card. So a use case like that with Lightning, or maybe you guys can come up with something better.
That's quite interesting, because we actually implemented that one as a student project back when I did my PhD, using the simple micropayment channels though, so you couldn't pay back. I think I'm probably not the right person to ask for groundbreaking new ideas about use cases that we unlock with Lightning, but I do have a very humble project or idea that I'd like to see realized in the future, and that's a fair compensation for content creators on the network. Basically, the current way of compensating content creators, be that YouTubers or be that podcasters or be that people that write nice blog articles or novels, it's utterly broken because we use this very strange, huge system of showing ads to people that don't want to buy stuff, but we encourage them to buy stuff. Because that's the only way to monetize on content that you publish on the internet. And if there were a way for us to directly and fairly compensate people for their work, because that's creative work that deserves to be paid, then I think we can undercut the entirety of the ad serving system, and we can completely remove this need for ad companies to create these extensive profiles that are a risk to us as a society, and still get content creators their fair share of payment.
So let me double check. So you don't think creating your own money and paying content creators and the money you've created is a solution to this problem?
I don't get the question.
Oh, I like exactly. I like Steam It, where you create your own money and then you pay content creators in the money you're creating, altcoins, basically. It was
yeah.
it was a sarcastic question.
So the usual example of an absolute stupid idea for an ICO is the batshit crazy bat. That I always use, and that's sort of their initial goal was to sort of incentivize people, content creators, by creating their
own money and paying them in their own money, right? That's bad. That's Steam It, and that's that's their solution, right?
There's no need to create a new money if we have a perfectly liquid money already, and that's Bitcoin. So let's just use that and maybe build a bit of infrastructure around it. But we have it. Let's use it.
So the question kind of morphed into a topic about microtransactions and compensation for online content. So I'll comment on that first. I'm a little more of a skeptic. I believe that we had the ability to manage centralized micropayments before Bitcoin, and it didn't happen. It didn't succeed. So we already tried it with maximum efficiency. And actually, Lightning, while it may be fast, we may achieve streamability of it. We may be able to denominate in very micro amounts. There's still the overhead of encryption for every change. There's still CPU cycle overhead, etc., which are higher overhead than in the centralized attempts prior to Bitcoin. So I have some skepticism about microtransactions being the thing that makes Lightning take us to the next century or such, just because there's still a minimum cost to anything, and I'm not sure that doing everything micro it will be anything better than making micro profits. And I also think on the topic of fairly compensating content creators, I'm not sure if the issue is that we don't have a efficient way or streamable way or a micro way to pay them. I think the issue might be that the market is oversaturated, that there's too much free content, and that you're competing in a very, very large market.
I'm definitely not helping.
Like look at the Bitcoin space. There's so much good content right now, but most people aren't paying anything for it. But it still persists, and it's getting better in higher quantity. So there's obviously other incentives people have to make content than money. Maybe it's fame. Maybe it's making money indirectly off of that fame, etc. I don't know. So that's my comments on those topics. As far as the future of Lightning, I would say, going back to what I said earlier, introducing concepts of automatically routing things through smart contracts, where there are terms of what happens to the coins that are automatic. For example, streaming payments to be able to get in between a content creator and a buyer, not necessarily to allow them to make the small payments, but to allow them to make the payments trustlessly, but still have a middleman. Other ideas would be like, I wonder what things are like when we have really, really big channels and what we can do. I'm thinking of concepts like lightning tunnels. What happens when we have like full big channels that we can move things? What happens when I'm going to sound bad maybe because Blockstream's here, but what happens when Lightning starts competing with Liquid and Lightning can move Bitcoin the same way or faster, etc.? What happens when Lightning has tokens? These kinds of things are what excite me.
Navad?
So first I would like to touch on a point that he raised about the efficiency of centralized solutions. So technology, like purely technology-wise, a centralized solution will always be more efficient. There is no way around it. But there are other issues like regulatory issues and trust issues. Like you could have a little silo that allows free micropayments between its users, and then maybe another silo. But once you have 6 or 7 of those silos and you want them to talk with each other, then it starts to get messy. And this is basically the banking system that we have the worldwide, right? So some banks offer like free or fast or cheap payments between them, but once you try to scale it to a global payment system, then it starts breaking down. It doesn't really work because of real-world issues of trust and lawyers and I don't know what, which we won't have in Lightning. Personally, I do see a lot of potential for the stuff that only Lightning can do, so nano payments and instant payments. I think using it for like regular payments or larger payments is something that we're gonna see developing later down the road. I think like I anticipate that we're gonna have like some hype cycles that are gonna be driven by basically by cool stuff that can only be done with Lightning. What you mentioned is a good example, paying for internet access. Some of my work, I don't know like what specific use cases will come. I don't have anything specific that I can point to and say, oh, this is gonna be it. But I was trying to, I guess maybe inspire. Like I worked on Lightning Charge, which is a system that makes it very easy to start accepting Lightning payments, and built a bunch of different demos on top of it. I'm gonna be showing this a bit later. Some of them are related to what you mentioned, paying content creators more directly without middlemen. Some are just cool demonstrations of what Lightning can do that I was hoping would spark some interest from developers and get people to find more cool stuff.
All right, awesome. If anyone has any questions, please come on up over to the microphone and ask them. We got a few minutes. All right, Leah, you're up. Mic on? There's an on button. Push it up. Yep, you're good. Yeah.
It's working? All right. Is the recent FUD around the HDLC dust routing around being trusted, not yet trustless, though correct or exaggerated?
Why am I hosting this panel and not you?
So the question is about whether we can trustlessly accept HLCs that are not representable on-chain. Is that sort of the rough idea?
Yeah, absolutely.
So just to take a step back, there are some HLCs that we cannot, or there are some payments that we cannot reflect in the state of the channel because the amounts are so small that they either are less than a Satoshi, so the minimum amount we can represent in a transaction, or that they are below the dust limit, which is 546 Satoshis currently. And the theory is that we can't really represent them, so we just pretend we added them, and then we will tally up later on. And the theory is that them not being trustless makes them utterly insecure, right? So first of all, why would you actually care about this millionth of a dollar? You probably want to. We have this small trick in the Lightning Network, which is called is that we use millisatoshis in the internal accounting of the channels, and that means that we have 1/1000th of the smallest unit that we can represent in Bitcoin itself as the smallest unit we can transfer in Bitcoin itself. So that is used as a unit of accounting internally, and once we reach 1,000 millisatoshis, we can actually reflect that on chain again as an output, for the settlement. And so while we internally keep track of millisatoshis, we only represent it as a satoshi, and that extends to these outputs being dust as well. But the reason that we don't represent them, and therefore they are semi-trusted, is that these amounts are so small that they only ever matter when we have millions of them, and only when we have millions of them will we be able to represent them on-chain as well, and that's when it matters. So sure, we will forward millisatoshi payments without adding them into our state that we represent on-chain, but the only time that they matter is when they accumulate over hours and months. So it's not really an issue, I guess.
All right, you got time for one more question.
Okay, I recently updated my LND, and at the same time I tried to make it run over Tor, and I failed. And I actually couldn't figure out whether it was running over Tor or not, so I rolled back the config. Is there an easy way to find out, like with Bitcoin, where you see it in the debug log, that it's running over Tor? I couldn't find anything in LND.
I don't really have experience running LND over Tor, not using it myself, but you should be able to look at the gossip messages. So basically what you'd be doing in C Lightning is basically just call list nodes and look for your own node and look what address is announced in there. And if that's an onion address, then you're running over a Tor. And if it's not an onion address, you're likely not.
Almost embarrassingly obvious, thank you.
Sure. It's obvious once you hear it. It's definitely not as obvious if you encounter this problem the first time. I've had it a few times as well.
Okay, so reverse obvious. And the second thing is, I haven't found a way to acquire a number of peers that make it. I haven't found a way to qualify what peers are worth connecting to and where to build channels to. Is there an algorithm for that? Is there a centralized database of really good nodes, or?
So the decision that goes into opening a channel with a peer or not, and how much money to put into this channel, is a very difficult one. So you're definitely not alone with this issue. And in fact, we're actually discussing about what a good metric would be for you to decide what a good peer is. Mm-hmm. And it's even on an academic level, it's not easy to decide this. So we are hoping to develop measurements of how well a peer would help you be connected to the rest of the network, while at the same time not having you connect to a hub that already has like 90% of the connectivity in the network, because that then becomes a single point of failure. So we have to bias against big nodes, but we have to still be in the vicinity of big nodes so they can provide us with the connectivity that we need. So definitely not trivial, working on it.
No, and I really like that question actually, because I've thought about that myself. I didn't raise it as a topic. And that's another reason why we have a conference like this, and the website understandingbtc.com. I mean, all of these videos are going to be on that website, and I want that website to have resources of how to build this stuff, and we have the connections. I mean, people that show up at a conference like this, I trust to connect to their Lightning nodes, so we could have a centralized list of people that myself, Giacomo, Adam Back trust as our node connectors. So same thing with Blockstream's website and some of the other companies that you trust to build decentralization. And if they list 100 nodes that they trust, that could be a nice centralized list for people like us.
Not sure we actually want to have a trusted list, because this should be as trustless as possible. But it's this kind of questions that gets the researcher inside of me excited, right? Because this is a problem I can probably work on for the next few months or weeks, and it's it's this kind of question where we can start discussing again, where we can sort of get the gray matter working and do some really groundbreaking research as well. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to tackling this one.
Yeah, let's build a web of trustlessness.
All right, we do have one more. Yeah. Go ahead. We do have one more question. I'm Aaron, Bitcoin Magazine, and then we'll take a little break and then do the demos on Lightning.
Yeah, so at one point people were talking about the Lightning Network as this network for multi-currency usage, right? So you send Bitcoin, you receive Litecoin at the other end, or you exchange it like decentralized exchanges. And I think that idea got some pushback because instead of forwarding a payment, you can wait to see how the price fluctuates. What's the status of that? Is the idea of Lightning as a multi-currency network dead, or are people still working on this? Or
It's pretty much alive, but not on the direct roadmap, so to speak. I mean, the issue that you were mentioning is basically that you can game the system by sort of having guarantees of pulling funds on one network and then waiting to issue the counterparty on the other side, and hoping that the price changes in your favor. And if it does not, you just reject it, and you basically just price gauge your trading partner, and I guess you can mix that into your exchange rate and sort of have this risk be considered when it comes to actually making the trade itself. So at least for the trading partners, you have the information, and knowing that this is an issue, you can consider it when making a trade on the network itself. Though I don't have the actual numbers for this, obviously. So
is anyone working on it or not right now?
I'm not personally working on it. I don't know who is.
All right.
I want to give a maximalist answer and say it's probably an economic or an incentive reason why no one's working on it. Why do we need other currencies on Lightning? Well, they have to behave differently somehow. What is probably the most likely way they would behave differently? They would be volatile at a lower frequency. So I think that maybe unless somebody wants to put a stable coin into this atomic swapping situation, there's not much reason to do it.
Argument was that it could be cheaper actually, because it's cheaper to open channels on Litecoin, and then that could sort of translate into fees. So it's even cheaper maybe to route the payment through Litecoin.
You still need, but if you're trading the Litecoin for Bitcoin, somebody on the Bitcoin side has to do Bitcoin paying. So
it's like a 5-hop payment, I don't know. That's just the reasoning. I don't know for that.
All right. Closing thoughts, guys. Last statement, and we'll head off to the demos.
Exciting time. Join us on the dark side.
be reckless.
Wow, I feel committed to come up with something good now. Yeah, I don't actually have something good. Thank you. I will be coming again for a demo in a few minutes, in a few, I don't know, an hour or something like that. I would love if you come to see that. Thank you.
All right, guys. All right, thank you so much. You want to make a little announcement?